start recording our video conference as well.
This conference will now be recorded.
It's like the chamber camera is much better angle now.
Yeah, I found the remote. Yeah, and put batteries in it, so I can, that helped. Yeah, I can.
You were
I
two
can,
steps away from it.
yeah, kind of.
Settings, start, settings.
Just quick.
Yeah, that's good. You got to catch it. You don't know until it starts, then it's too late to catch it.
Yeah, I went to the game. Started off on the cities. Yeah. I saw that.
That's what you might have asked. It's either way down or up.
I don't know where to, that's where it's small enough.
Celebrating 30 years.
It's good, have a scale. So he figures it was maybe.
Is that a crappie?
Yeah, that's what I should have told him. There's something like that.
That guy needs to get a job, all he does is this.
His son is off, when his son is off, that's what they go do. They've been doing a lot of it lately.
Yeah.
To Lone Star the other.
Blink here?
Night, I guess.
You have the app on the thing?
Hey, I think we were going to Perry.
That was Lone Star there?
Yeah,
No,
that's
it was Perry.
that's
It was
the
on Perry. Yeah, Mike Perry, you did not get there. It's so long since he was there. He goes, why is the bridge closed? And I'm like, I'm just kidding. It's just been a while since you fished over there.
We have a technical delay here. Is that
Yeah,
where we are?
yeah. I don't think it's a crucial thing.
What are we working on?
Just getting Patrick on the video feed.
Oh.
Yeah, try the website there, yeah. Go to council agendas. And on YouTube. Not sure why it's not.
Go to meet. We should just save that meeting ID in our go to meet thing, and then it would always be there.
Yeah.
All right, I have time. 7 o'clock, it's actually 7:01. We will call the September 2nd DeSoto City Council to order. Start with roll call, please.
Murdoch,
Here.
Ritter,
Here.
Michael,
Here.
Daniels,
Here.
Lane. Here. Here's all members are present.
Okay. I would ask you all to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Our first item tonight is going to be a proclamation. We have a proclamation regarding KC Scholars and 5 years of Path to Possible. Whereas KC Scholars was established in 2016 and provides life-changing opportunities for thousands of individuals across the 6-county bi-state region, and whereas KC Scholars provides low to modest income students and return adult learners with an opportunity to complete a post-secondary credential and/or degree, and whereas KC Scholars has made 5,261 and scholarship awards of over 500 in Johnson County in its first 5 years of operation, and whereas KC Scholars and the City of DeSoto honors all post-secondary pathways, supporting certificates, credentials, associates, and/or bachelor's degree completion, and whereas KC Scholars connects its scholars to regional employers to achieve its goals that 80% of scholar graduates stay in the Kansas City region to live, work, and whereas KC Scholars is celebrating its 5-year anniversary on September 28, 2021, now, therefore, I, Rick Walker, Mayor of the City of DeSoto, do hereby proclaim September 28, 2021 as KC Scholars Day and urge all residents to celebrate the scholastic achievements of our local students as they pursue their academic dreams. Was someone
No, there's, no, Mayor, there's no one coming today.
to mail that to, or?
Yeah,
you-
I will drop that in the mail to them
Okay.
tomorrow.
Great. All right. Our next item will be a public hearing. A public hearing to hear proposed property tax mill levy in excess of the revenue neutral rate. Mike, you want to introduce this?
I certainly can, yeah. Brandon was actually the one that
Oh,
put the memo
Brandon?
together, but.
That's right, it is the city clerk's responsibility.
That is, yeah.
Evening, Mayor and Council. This is a new requirement from the state of Kansas. During the July 15th council meeting, we briefly reviewed the impacts of Senate Bill 13. Essentially, Senate Bill 13 is a law that removed the tax lid, which limited the amount of growth an assessed valuation of jurisdiction could capture in a single year. The tax lid was allowed for growth based on the consumer price index. In its place, the legislature put in a revenue neutral rate. Essentially, the revenue neutral rate is a base levy based on the previous year's revenues. The city has notified the county clerk on July 16th of its intent to levy above the revenue neutral rate. And as a result, the city must hold a revenue neutral hearing before it can adopt the 2022 budget. Just for reference, the revenue neutral rate for the county was 22.402, and the city of DeSoto is adopting a levy of 23.223 mils. I recommend you open the public hearing, receive and file the comments, and close the public hearing, and adopt the revenue neutral rate resolution.
Okay. With that, I will officially open the public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak on the revenue neutral rate tax mill levy? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And then we'll go on and do our public hearing for our budget. Mike, I'm assuming you're going to introduce this.
Yeah, I will. And so we'll take action as the first agenda item. on
Right.
New business is that resolution. We'll take action on that. The next public hearing item then is for the adoption of our 2022 DeSoto's fiscal budget. As Brandon explained, the process is a little different than it was in years past. We had actually an extension of our deadline because of the revenue neutral rate hearing, which couldn't happen before a certain date. So that's tonight. So as a result, our timeline got pushed back about a month. We usually have this done by the end of August. Regardless, the public hearing, as much as that we've had in the past, I do have a short presentation just for purposes of summary. The budget document is over 150 pages, I think now we're up to, that includes the official state forms, or the last 20 or 30 pages of that document. Those are what we send to the county and are the official document. All of our other budget document really is kind of for internal purposes, for our accounting and for statements of policy and projection matters and all the important decisions that this board makes on an annual basis. So I just wanted to run through just quickly, and stop me if you have any questions at any point, but this is really just a high-level overall summary of the 2022 budget. The first thing that you'll see in the budget document is this summary. Oh, sorry, did not mean to do that. This summary page here just outlines the total expected revenues from each of the major funds in our budget, and those funds are the general fund that basically is City Hall, the street department, any fund that doesn't generate a revenue, utility-based revenue. We also have the water fund and the sewer fund. We have a police fund, a refuse fund, police, debt service, and capital improvements. So if you look at the total revenues, so on this sheet here, the budget calls for about $5.3 million in revenues from the general fund, just under $2 million in revenues from the water, $700,000 from the sewer, $625 from the refuse, police $548, and debt service $1.6. Capital improvements revenues at $4.4 million. So total revenues for all those budgets proposed for 2022 of $14.752 million. Total expenses for 2022, $15.157. Those are the budgeted expenditures. Most of this, you see less revenues than expenditures. There is acknowledgement in the general fund specifically that we will be spending down some of the balance, and I'll show you here in a minute why that is. Some of the fund balance. So budgeted expenditures exceed budgeted revenues for next year, and that's actually been pretty common for us the last several budget cycles. One major generator of the revenues is obviously property tax. We were talking about the mill levy of 23.223. Property tax are based on assessed valuations the county appraiser makes on all properties throughout the city. This chart shows total assessed valuations for the city over the last several years. You see a very steady march upward, including a difference from last year, 21 to 2022, of about a 12% increase in assessed valuations from last year. The caveat to that is that previous year, in 2021, the county mistakenly abated about $15 million in property tax on the Merck property, which artificially deflated our assessed valuation, the formal assessed valuation for last year. Had they not done that, that assessed valuation for last year should have been about $89 million, which would have been a more slow increase from 20 to 21 to 22. If they'd done that, had not made that mistake, the increase year over year will be about 7%, which is what we'd seen the last 3 or 4 years. And again, that, as a reminder, that accounts for new growth, new construction, new homes that are being built in the city, but it also accounts for just increased in retail value of properties, or really throughout the spectrum. Everybody notices the increase in retail, or increase in valuations on the residential side. Further explanation of funding streams here: sales and use tax revenues. Sales tax represents about a third of our general fund revenue stream. So we've been paying very close attention to this and the reasons for it. You can see the dark blue line is really the summary line. This adds all these together. So it's divided among the sales tax that's captured in the city, and then our portion of the sales tax that's captured countywide that's distributed back to the cities. So if you add all those 4 lines together, you see sharply increasing sales tax between 2015 and 2021, or 2020, and even projected for 2021. Those trend lines continue to surprise us on the positive side. In July, we had a presentation to you of a pretty detailed analysis that was done by a financial advisor that just reconfirms that there's not really a magic bullet to this increase. There's nothing that's driving it that might go away unexpectedly as we had feared. Kind of got to the bottom of that question, at least in my mind, and that these revenues generally are the result of overall economic activity among broad sectors in the city and also in the county. But you can see that we do remain very conservative with our sales tax projections. So the line up to 2021 is projected based on the sales tax collections through July,
And we're, again, projecting another very positive increase over the last year. But this line, and the red line's out of place. This red line is meant to be on 2022 proposed budget. Our budget is assuming a sharp decrease, to remain very conservative with sales tax projections. Sharp decrease and then continuing on an increase from then on out. Those are conservative fiscal projections for that. My expectation is that this line will continue to be above the dotted trend line for the foreseeable future. That's the hope. Other sources of revenues aside from property taxes are these, just combined all together in this one chart: franchise fees, planning fees, court licensing revenues, kind of miscellaneous. You can see here our proposed budget is below the trend line. We did have a dip in those revenues that's projected for this year. We expect that to rebound and then continue on just the trend line projections there. Summary of the mill levy, and we talked about this during the budget formation, and we talked about this a lot last fall when we realized that the county mistakenly exempted $15 million of our appraised value, which equated to about $4 million of our assessed value. For us, that equates to about a 1 mil difference. So you remember we published the 2021 budget in August, and that the mill rate that we published was just over 24 mils. And that was a decline from the previous year, which is a decline from the previous and the previous and the previous. So they were all declining nicely throughout that. In the fall, at some point between the time we approved the budget and the actual appraisals came out, this mistake occurred with the appraiser's office, which in general, what happens there, we don't say, when we publish the budget, we don't necessarily publish this is the exact tax rate we want. What we publish is that this is the amount of revenues we want to generate from the mill. And so the revenues remain the same, and this mill rate can fluctuate. And typically it does by maybe a couple of hundredths or even a tenth maybe between the time we publish and the actual valuations come out. Well, this time it went up by 1.1 mils, which was the cause for the alarm and the cause for all that. So had that not occurred, we would have been steadily decreasing still. So this chart shows mill levy 2021 budget. That's what we expected to have. This is the 2021 official but incorrect. So that's what I'm calling it. I mean, the county can call it what they want, but that's what I'm calling it in our budget document. So it went up to 25.1. So if you look at year over year, it looks like we're just really taking a big chunk out of this mill levy, but in actuality, it's just a very slight, slow decline that we've had over the past few years. It's enough, that's all I'll say about that, unless it comes up again. So, general fund revenues, oh, there it is again. General fund revenue, this is just kind of a stacked bar chart, just showing what types of revenues go into our general fund, and you can see these, the green bar here is the sales tax, which is a big portion of our revenues. What keeps the city running is that sales tax, which is why we were very purposeful about making sure that we knew where that sales tax was going and had a reasonable level of comfort with our projections. Franchise fees, recreational fees, some other miscellaneous stuff, and then property tax here is at the bottom, the red bar, it's property tax. In terms of crafting the budget, we always, of course it's always done on a year-to-year basis, but our practice really is to look at 5 years out and see how the decisions we make today on the projections that we have reasonably assumed will impact the budget later on. The goal is to maintain conformance with our fiscal policy that we always maintain an end-of-year fund balance of about 30% of our operating revenue. 30% of our operating expenses, excuse me. So that revenue, that's mislabeled. It should say expenses. So the thick blue line is that percentage, and so the percentage is over here. You see the anomaly here in 2021 of a projected spike in the year-end fund balance up to over $3 million, represent about 65% of that operating expense. This is largely because of unexpected CARES Act and Recovery Act funds. There's about $500,000 we received this summer that was unexpected We're gonna roll that into the CIP discussion. We have some time to figure out how we want to use that money and how we want to expend it. So this year's projections are artificially high by about $500,000. So if you take that off of this chart here, you'd see that this bar would come down, somewhere in this level, and it'd look a lot more normal, right? So this spike is abnormal. The 2022 budget proposes to spend that down, by about $600,000 to get us back on this projection where the year-end fund balances normalize toward that 30% by the end of the projection period. And that's where we've been the last several years. Law enforcement fund's a little bit different. We don't necessarily have to keep a big reserve in that, so we don't have a policy on how much that reserve is. I haven't even shown it really, but the revenues here about 550,000, expenditures 560, so right in that area. This red line shows the mill levy history. So this year we're knocking that mill levy down from 5.8 to 5.2 for that, but just on the basis that these the fund balances do remain above zero and even show a rebound through 2027. Debt service fund is kind of the same way. There's no need to really keep a big balance in there. We've taken them from 5.7 down to 4.0, and still the projections are showing this increasing over time. I didn't want to show a further reduction in that mill levy, so I just left it at 4.0 through the projection period and allowed these fund balances to climb. We can reassess that next year. You'll remember we issued some bonds this summer, and this chart shows our debt service profile throughout through 2045. The purple stuff is our debt service obligations that are represented by the new debt we just issued this summer. So that's Series 2021. And the blue is everything we've already had. Remember, we refinanced a lot of the existing debt this summer, and we added about $2 million in new debt for capital. That's shown by purple. You see before the purple, we had this debt profile that kind of fell off a cliff here in 2033. The new debt is structured so that debt service payments are relatively small until then, and then they increase so that our overall profile continues to decrease over time. The expectation is that as we get closer to 2033 and as we get closer to the next big dip here around 37 and 40, there will be new debt that will continue, hopefully as the city grows, as tax base increases, this line will continue a solid downward trend. That's the hope, so that the mill levy can continue that solid downward trend. That's the hope, but it probably is not an expectation that we'll just never issue any more debt and just fall down off the cliff here in 2040. That's probably not the expectation, but the good fiscal policy practice is to just slope this line down as it is here based on new growth. So similar to the general fund, this is the water fund, year-ending balances here. 2021 is projected a slight decrease from 2020, and then 2022 budget is a further decrease. See, revenues 1.5, expenditures 2.2. This again is normalizing those fund balances toward the 30% level over time. So this is I'm very comfortable with these types of charts that show us normalizing toward that policy level of 30%. This does include a 1% rate increase that's budgeted and is assumed in the rate structure. We've had a similar budgeted increase for the last 3 years, and we haven't had to implement those increases the last 3 years. It also assumes a 2% growth just in the user base, more people coming in, more businesses buying more. Assumes that. Sewer fund is similar story. 21 projected is 500,000. 2022 goes up a little bit, but then they normalize. Again, a 1% increase in rate is budgeted, and the base user growth of 1.5%. That's the end of the presentation, and I'll answer any questions you might have about that. Don't forget to open the public hearing.
Questions on Mike's presentation? Okay. With that, then I will officially open the public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak regarding our 2022 City of DeSoto budget? Okay. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And then again, we'll take these up under new business 4A, 4B.
Yes.
So our next item is our consent agenda. On the consent agenda tonight, we have approval of our minutes from our council meeting on August 19th and approval of pay ordinance number 909. Anyone have an item they wish to discuss on the consent agenda or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Lane. Yes. Daniels,
Yes.
Huntermichael.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Our next item is approval of pay ordinance number 909A, and I would ask our clerk to note that Councilman Ritter is leaving the meeting. Would someone like to make a motion regarding?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we approve pay ordinance 909A.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Huntermichael,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Lane. Yes. Ritter. Motion carries.
Okay. Patrick, would you go get Councilman Ritter, please? Moving on, we will go to call to public. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to comment about any matter relating to city business not listed on tonight's agenda. The comments under call to public may or may not be acted on by the council. During this meeting, there is a 4-minute time limit. Does anyone wish to address the council tonight under call to public? Please come forward, state your name and address.
Donna Funk, 9965 Edgerton Road. Was looking for any information or update on the potential plans with the southwest growth area, specifically the Gabriel Farm property.
Okay. We do not have any applications submitted yet. Mike?
Yeah, well, so the planning commission took up the revision to the comprehensive plan about the infrastructure, future infrastructure plans of that area. They had the discussion last Tuesday night. They tabled that until they could get a clean version of the new language of the comprehensive plan. So that'll go back to them at their meeting in September. It's the fourth meeting fourth Tuesday in September. That then would come back to the council, likely the first meeting in October, for final approval.
So will there be any additional information shared with the public for the potentially impacted plans of homeowners out there?
Yeah, not to my knowledge.
There won't be, so you're not going to share any additional information?
There's no plans to share, to issue any additional information on future developments in the area, no.
So what is the decision process or time frame on that whole execution of the option or?
Right. So, as far as the governing body goes, of course, understand that the EDC is working with people, interested parties, landowners, land developers.
Who are they working with?
There's parts of that are under non-disclosure agreements, and the EDC is separate and apart from this body for that particular reason.
But how many of this body are on the EDC?
I'm sorry?
How many people on this body are part of the EDC?
There is representation from the council that is on the advisory board for the EDC. Yes, but that's not part of the city function. That's separate and apart. The EDC is a separate entity, and there's elements of that must remain out of public discourse for confidentiality reasons, and that's for property owners, for potential developers, for all those reasons. In terms of the project actually occurring, there are several steps that do require public input, public hearings, notification, and several things that occur during an open meeting. So those include annexations, possibly rezonings, possibly site plans, possibly incentive applications. All of that stuff has to happen in a public forum before it occurs in the city of DeSoto. So that will all, when and if something happens there, that will all happen in a public forum.
Did I understand you to say, though, that there are discussions being had currently with the impacted landowners?
I can't comment on further discussions taking place on the EDC side, sorry.
But I thought that's what you said. I was just asking you to clarify the statement you made just a couple minutes ago.
Okay, I can't, I'm sorry, I can't clarify that.
Can't clarify your own statement?
Well, I'm not sure what you're referencing.
Well, I thought you said that there were conversations being had or communications with impacted landowners.
There are no public outreach or public comment or individual discussions with any property owners that are by this body that might be impacted by any future development in that area. We're not doing any outreach or communication with anyone about anything that might happen in the future, other than the Southwest Growth Plan that we added to our comprehensive plan.
So those landowners are just left to wonder what's going on and be kept in the dark, because we're not in the city.
Yeah. You're not, the documents are all available. We've had our comprehensive plan online for 20 years, so
Right,
you're
but
not
I
in the
don't
dark
think
anymore
the
than
Gabriel
anyone else
property was
is.
in that document 20 years ago. I bet
I'm
it
sorry?
was. I don't think the Gabriel property and the expansion of Edgerton Road and adding new roads were in the document
Yeah.
20 years ago,
They
or
were,
even
but-
5 years ago.
Yeah.
The Sunflower Park, yes.
Ever since I have lived in this city, the goal, or the city has, the plans that I have seen shown DeSoto growing to west to the county line. This is not a new concept that we've introduced. It's a concept that's been in place since 1998 with the first plan that I ever saw, and I'm sure it was in place before that.
Okay, well, it wasn't sure because when we inquired 5 years ago when we bought the property.
Anyone else under call to public? Seeing none, we'll move on. Item 3, old business, we have none. Item 4A is resolution 1054 to consider exceeding revenue neutral tax rates. Sorry? Well, I don't, did you want to introduce anything more, or?
No, there's nothing
No,
more. I
there's
think we
nothing.
explained it during the
I'll
public
make a
hearing.
motion, then we approve resolution, excuse me, I'll make a motion, we approve resolution 1054 to levy property tax rate exceeding the revenue neutral rate.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Lane.
yes,
Motion carries.
Item 4B, consider adoption of the 2022 budget.
Yes, council, nothing more to really present here. The adoption can take place by a simple motion to adopt the budget. It will require your signature on the state declaration forms, which Brandon has here. I'm gonna pull it up here. It outlines the total tax amount, dollar amount that you will levy. It's
Okay.
this here. So if you're so inclined, please make a motion adopting the 2022 municipal budget and sign this certificate document that's going around now. Thank you.
Does anyone need more budget information, or are we ready to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, we adopt the 2022 budget as presented.
And I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Lane,
yes,
Daniels,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Murdoch.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Item 4C, consider temporary use permit for a downtown fall event on October 16th.
Yes, Council, Brad apologizes, can't be here. He had a doctor's appointment this afternoon that turned into a minor procedure, fine, but wasn't feeling up to coming tonight. This item here is a temporary use permit set for October 16th. The request is to close downtown from Wea to Shawnee Street between 9 a.m. What was it, 10? Sorry, I'm not as familiar. 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. For a downtown DeSoto fall event is what they're calling it. Vendors and booths and food booths as well. It is a temporary use permit. Brad outlined some of the considerations and is recommending approval of that. The only ask for us is that the street department provide the barricades. They'll place them and remove them when everything is done. But we need to set them out on a Friday. And it is technically a requirement of the applicant to notify the sheriffs and police, but we found that it's not a good idea to just rely on the applicant, so staff will be coordinating that as well.
Okay. Question from council? Or a motion?
They had a event similar to this,
A couple years ago.
but they did one this spring or sometime.
They did one
too.
in the spring, yeah.
And I assume there's no problems or any
Yeah.
issues with
none
that.
that I'm aware of.
Okay.
No,
I'm trying to remember what date it was. I know I wasn't in town, but I can't
We
remember
went,
when it was.
I mean, it was probably COVID had something to do with it, but it was maybe less attended than they would have liked, I would suppose. But there was there was a reasonable turnout.
Well, I'll make a motion, we approve the temporary use permit for the DeSoto Fall event, downtown DeSoto Fall event.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Walker,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Lane.
yes,
Motion carries.
Item D, consider final plat for Cedar Arc subdivision.
Yes, council, this is a minor plat. In our subdivision regulations, there's a procedure for plats that don't have any more than 5 lots and don't need to extend public infrastructure or public rights of way. To plat them as a minor plat, which alleviates really the requirement of the planning commission to do a preliminary plat, and some drainage studies, and some of the other impact studies that are otherwise required. This property actually has frontage on Hillview Drive currently. I guess I could pull up an Ames map because I don't think the staff report really kind of showed you where the thing is. So it's on Hillview, this parcel here. I'm going to turn the parcel outlines on. Essentially, it's this parcel here, 12.5 acres plus this 1.8 acres up here is being replatted into the 2 lots that you see. Oops, not there. That you see here. So Hillview Drive is to the far northeast corner here, and Cedar Creek Road is on the west. So Lot 1 has its frontage along Cedar Creek Road. Lot 2 will maintain its existing frontage along Hillview Drive. The interesting part about this is that if you turn on these elevation contours, you see these are 10 feet elevations. The access to Cedar Creek Road would be very difficult. So the plat shows an access easement extending off of Cedar Creek, off of Hillview Drive for Lot 1. The physical access will take place off there. So that's a little different. We know that the physical access won't be taking place off of the technical lot frontage, but that's for reasons of incompatibility, essentially with the surrounding topography. Otherwise, this may have just been a lot split. So, Planning Commission had a look at this, unanimously recommended approval, and staff is doing the same, and I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Mike? or a motion to accept easements and right-of-way?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, accept the easements and right-of-way for the final plat for Cedar Arc.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Hanamichael,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Lane.
yes,
Motion carries.
Okay. Item E, consider final plat for carriage houses replat.
Yes, council, this is a replat of the latest final plat for carriage houses. I don't know if you remember, but when you saw this last time, the plan is to, of course, this is just the next phase, the next building that they want to build. Leasing rates are going great for them, so they essentially will build out the remainder of the property they have there with a new building on the east side and then one up in the northwest corner. Last time you saw this, it had these lots out here as outside storage spaces. And the Planning Commission looked this in terms of the overall development plan, decided it was appropriate for the outside storage areas to be here, well buffered by the railroad tracks and all the other buildings. The owner just wants space to provide, someone to store an RV or a boat or a car out there that's not covered. Last time we saw these, this was placed in individual lots, and the concept at the time was that the condominiums would sell each one of these little spaces and someone would own that outright. Turns out that arrangement doesn't really fit well with the covenants and deed restrictions for their condominium association. Their attorneys think it would be much better to just plat it as a tract and lease these individual spots. So it really is, it's on their side of this legal kind of trouble that they would have with the individual lots. So they came back to Planning Commission and just basically want to replat those, just take those out of the plat process. They'll define those lots by meets and bounds and descriptions within their own lease arrangement with people who want those. So really this is just an undoing of all those individual lots in the condominium.
Just something to make a surveyor some more money.
Yes. So that's it.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yes, Planning Commission's recommending approval.
Questions for Mike? Motion to approve, or whatever we need to, there's nothing to accept.
Yeah, these are weird. I mean, there's no rights of way or easements to accept, but plats do, in our subdivision regulations, they do go forward to the council. So, I would say just an approval motion would be appropriate.
I'll make a motion to approve the carriage house number 10 final plat as presented tonight.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Lane,
yes,
Daniels,
Yes.
Hanamichael,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Walker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Item F, consider timeline for CIP overhaul.
Yes, Mayor and council members, now that we've adopted the budget, staff has begun the process of working on the 2022 through 2026 CIP. If you recall, the last major overhaul was in 2018. This CIP overhaul will include input from staff, the Planning Commission, the Parks Advisory Board, and members of the public. Staff is currently preparing a citizen satisfaction survey to be sent out in the next week or so, and the results will be presented on October 22nd. If you follow the agenda item, there are a couple key dates we wanted to outline. The first being kind of a call for projects to department heads. The next one coming up would be a CIP discussion with the Parks Advisory Board. We're going to put that on the agenda to walk them through since many of the members are new. The Citizen Satisfaction Survey will be released in September. We'll discuss the CIP with the Planning Commission on the 28th. The projects are due back to me because I'll be compiling them and then giving them to Mike for his prioritization. On the 8th of October, we'll have the citizen satisfaction survey will close. And then on the 21st, we will have a presentation of the CIP request to council. And then we will, on November 4th, we'll have a draft CIP with a tentative date for CIP adoption on December 2nd.
Yeah, council, this follows real closely the process that we did in the fall of 2017 when we adopted in early 2018 the CIP that's largely in the format that we have it now. We had CIPs before, but they were a little less formally organized, I guess is a good way to put it. So it's only been 4 years, but we thought we really need to accelerate kind of the overhaul, really for 2 reasons, maybe 3. First one is the Recovery Act funding. We're getting about $1 million in the next 2 years to throw toward improvements. You know, that funding is limited to water, sewer infrastructure, and broadband, those 3 general areas. So those fit squarely in the CIP discussion. So we thought with $1 million injected in there, we need to have a new look and a new prioritization of that. Secondly is the referendum question, the parks referendum question, that failed in the spring of 2020, and that the park board has been working toward revised recommendations for another possible referendum next year. So considering those, basically those 2 things, we thought it was appropriate to just bump this up by 1 year on the overhaul to engage. Our updates on a yearly basis have been a smaller version of this. I still ask department heads, what do you think you want? We still kind of go through this in January and February with the council about shifting funding sources and priorities around, but it's not this community engagement, and so that's really what we want to get out of this, is a broader, open it up to public input, community engagement, get their thoughts. Citizen satisfaction survey won't just be for the CIP. There will be some elements of the CIP in there, but it really is a much broader citizen satisfaction survey. Lots, I think almost all the other cities in Johnson County do this on a regular basis. Some of them do it yearly. We haven't done one since 2017, so I think it's time for that. So, just wanted to get it in front of you, make you aware of it. Scheduled in, tucked in here is our retreat on the 23rd, so it'll be pretty good timing. We'll have an idea about what the needs are. We wouldn't have had any public input by then, but we'll have the survey results back by then. So I think a segment of our retreat will be focused toward this potentially. You see where we're at when we get there.
Are we planning on doing the survey in-house or using an outside?
We planned on doing it in-house. Yeah. I think the last time we did it, now that you say that, we did have an outside that they made an effort to get a representative sampling of the community.
Right.
And it was kind of a phone call structure thing where they made attempts at phone calls and a little bit of a black box there, but in the end, we only got a couple hundred responses to that. I think we can do better than that. The risk is that somehow we get responses from a segmented piece of the population that doesn't represent everybody.
Right.
So, yeah, that would be the only reason. I think maybe we could look toward having someone help us get the survey out. We can develop it in-house, I believe. So maybe, Brandon, we can reach out to, there's a number, I can't remember who it was when we did it last time, what the firm was.
So the one that a lot of communities use is ETC. I think the last time we might have used Jim Thomas. Does that sound right?
Doesn't ring a bell.
Advertising guy, market research guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Was that the main reason for your question, or do you want? I guess the other side of it is, I think last time we brought the survey to you guys and said, hey, these questions look okay?
Yeah, no, I'm not, I think that we're fine, with forming the questions, maybe framing them a little bit of, need a little, review, but it's just making sure we get a representative sample,
Yeah.
that we don't get overrepresented in any area that might
Yeah.
skew, yeah.
Why don't we do this, and I know this might mess the schedule up a little bit, but let's bring the survey questions back to the council at the next meeting, so at least you have a chance to look at them and, give some input on the survey questions. And maybe by then we have some discussions with marketing, some of these outreach firms to see what it might take to engage them to do that sort of process, to get a kind of a more scientific approach to survey results. And I think we can tabulate stuff for ourselves, but we'll have those discussions.
Yeah.
That seems like a reasonable thing to do on the survey.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other comments? Any comments from council? Anything else on that, Brandon?
No, that's it.
Okay. We will move on then. Item 5 is an executive session. Someone have a motion for that?
Oh, did not prepare that.
Well, gosh darn it.
Make a motion to go in pursuant to blah, 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 blah,
Yes.
to blah, 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 blah.
Starts with KSA. Yeah.
Sorry about that, Patrick.
No, that, I should have saw it on the agenda. Hold on just a second. We can table them. Yeah, if you want to do advisor reports.
All right, we can move on and then go around. Mike, do you want to start
Okay,
with
sure.
advisory report? While we're working on that?
No, yeah, well, I sure can. Happy to answer any questions that you might
You
have.
didn't have anything?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
All right, city clerk, anything under advisory reports?
Tomorrow afternoon, pending rain, the Arts Council is doing an unveiling of the sculpture at 4:15.
Okay,
Cookies, right?
There were cookies, yes.
Right.
cookies and raincoats.
We're working on a backup plan if it rains. I'll send out an email.
All right. I have one item. I'll do it right now. And I don't know that it takes any action, but Rob's gonna replace me on the park board as the council liaison. So it's more, I guess, just information. I don't know that we need any consent, I guess.
Congratulations are in order.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But he'll
All right.
take that going forward. Anything from Yuri and Kevin?
No report, but a request.
Okay.
I think maybe it would be timely to get a kind of an update on economic development activity from Sarah Ritter, our economic development executive, just for general awareness of the interest that's been shown in the community. I did get a little proactive and just check with Sarah's schedule, and I understand that there's a vacation plan that would coincide with the next council meeting. So what do you think about having her come in for, not the next council meeting, but the council meeting after that for a broad?
First one in October, or?
Yeah, not the next one, but whatever the next one,
Yeah.
but just for a broad gauge economic development report.
Certainly open to that.
That's all I have.
Okay, I will,
I'll coordinate that.
Mike
yeah,
will
sure.
coordinate. I'll coordinate with Mike to coordinate that with
All right.
Thank you.
Lori?
I don't really think I have anything really to report, but the retreat, will you be asking for any information from us ahead of time just because I've kind of got a list of things in my phone that I'd like to throw out for us to discuss at that point in time.
Oh, perfect, yeah.
And so I didn't know if you were planning on doing that. If not, I'll just send some of my ideas to Brandon, but
Yeah, Brandon, what discussions have you had with Jeannie about that?
I just had a brief conversation with Jeannie, just kind of, I gave her the information from last time. Mike and I were gonna meet early next week to discuss it. It's not till the end of October, but we were gonna start to have some preliminary discussions on
Yeah.
topics
okay.
to come up with.
So, yeah, some reach out to get some feedback before we
Yeah.
set the agenda would be
Yeah.
helpful.
That'd be great.
Okay. Rob?
A couple things. I asked Mike about this in private, but I'll ask him as well. The roundabout, last council meeting, he pretty much said it was going to be done. It's been 2 weeks, and it seems like they've abandoned us like RG Fiber did.
Yeah.
So what's the update on the roundabout?
Well, they haven't quite abandoned us, but, so there were 2 completion deadlines, and one of them was before school started to have the lanes all there and temporary signage up, and they met that. It seems like after they met that, then there probably some other project that they have to go and they have a big push on. The second deadline is coming up in the middle of September. I think it's the 18th, a couple weeks from now, to have it substantially complete. And that means all the signage in, the landscaping in, the pavement markings done, all except for maybe some cleanup around the edges, substantially complete. So, there's nothing that leads me to believe that they're not still, wouldn't still meet that deadline. Understand, we want the cones gone, I want the equipment out of there, I want people to, see a finished product, but it's just like, it's every step of the way with that. They have 5 different contractors that they have to coordinate, and so one comes in, and then there's gaps in the schedule for the next one that comes in their part. So that's where we're at, we're kind of in between. They were out there yesterday, and I think even today, doing the permanent signage.
Okay.
So they've been chipping away at it.
Broadband, we started strong, but it seems like south of K10, we had our progress for a long time, but everything in the existing area seems to be stalled. What are we looking at? Are we going to reconstitute the broadband group to try and figure out what to do to get broadband to the rest of the city?
Yeah, well, understanding there's still pockets, that don't have competition. I don't know, there are still a few that don't have any service at all, north of K10. There's 3 or 4 of them. Our deal with RG Fiber didn't have any hammers or firm commitments that they would build out, anything really north of the city. It was all focused toward south of K10 and the stuff they did for the city, and that's done. Yeah, we can continue those discussions. I think Zoom Fiber has been pretty aggressive at trying to build out, but for the most part, RG, their construction operations have gone other places in the last 18 months or 12 months. If there's something that we need to reconstitute the broadband committee toward that end, we'd be happy to do that and try and make those inroads. Unfortunately, it still does come down to, just like the incumbents were before, it's this whole ROI analysis that they do on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. Arcadian that's being built now, there's conduits going in there that'll allow service there. Anything new, Arbor Ridge, the same way. The new stuff, putting conduits in, so the ROI calculation can be a lot easier on those. I'm just not sure what avenues we can do now to stoke that fire that we had there for a while.
Okay. Last comment just deals with the southwest growth area. My personal opinion is we're fumbling around handling the public relations side of it. Even tonight, it seems like it's coming across from the city that it seems like we're not necessarily being honest, is what it seems like, and I'm not saying that's the case, but for 28 years, at least in the documents, as long as I've been here, that southwest corridor over to Edgerton Road and Evening Star has been listed as light industrial growth pattern. With the hot marketplace, the properties are of high interest to lots of people. It seems like we're at a point where it'd be simply better to say there's high interest. Something will break free at some point, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, a year, and pretty much just stand behind what this council's voted for all along of that area will likely see the light industrial movement or commercial movement that's been planned for that amount of time. So.
Okay.
Well, the mayor did say that at the last meeting. I mean, his final comments were, this area is, you know, it will develop. And I think what's important is, you know, the steps where we're at right now are infrastructure studies so that if the development does happen, we know what it's going to cost for them to do that. As far as, you know, answering questions about individual projects, that isn't something that we can necessarily ever do. But it is true that, you know, we can probably tell the public, as you've said, that there is always interest in that area. And people come to us. But I think that we have made that, I mean, the mayor did make that comment at the last meeting that, you know, that area will develop. It's not just if, it's a when it's going to happen. But I don't know that we can be too much more specific about anything else.
I'm not saying specific, I'm just saying the interest is there, the inquiries are there, and that this could be quick, it could be longer term. It's like a property that's listed for market. I mean, we've got houses around that are that way, that they're on the market, but in this marketplace, that means it could be quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rob, I think that's exactly why I asked to have Sarah come and give a presentation to the council, to really bring into a public setting exactly what you're.
Well, you've got the capability of bringing that too. You're our liaison to the council.
But I don't act on behalf of the chamber.
But-
And I'm really not the one to, as a council member, to say what Sarah is doing every day in terms of these pursuits or give that data. I don't, you know, I don't have that kind of data, but I do absolutely agree that I think we do need to say, you know, for years, DeSoto gets interest from KCADC and Department of Commerce level pursuits. And I think if we can have Sarah come in and give that in a public setting, then that gets that information out there. That's exactly why I made that request to have her come in. I think it clears up some of that part that looks cloudy.
But I guess my question is there something that she's going to bring that the 4 representatives could advise the other 3 of us about?
We've had
I agree, she should be in here.
It's supposed to be that liaison and position.
So, you know, we could roughly say that in the last, without having any documents in front of us here, that in the last 5 years that I've been on, there's been big projects that have come to us that we have not captured, and that there's ongoing phone calls to Sarah, probably at any one time, 10 active projects that we or the city EDC is responding to. You know, what's hard for me to come and say that to you guys right now without, you know, being prefaced by Sarah is how much we can say and what we can't say, because a lot of that is confidential stuff. So, you know, but there are projects that come to DeSoto. There's been big ones that have been very close, and that's happened on and off for the last 5 years at least. Many of them. And at any point in time, Sarah's working and sending information to through KDADC and through the state, for multiple projects. That's about all we can say. I mean,
Can you get your mic a little, or turn it on? Danny's, I think, having trouble hearing you.
And I'm not saying we're to be specific about it and say this project or that project. I'm just saying what has been stated there, of
No, I like
interest
that.
has increased
I mean, there is interest.
substantially to where something could happen in short order. I mean, it's like any property sale that we're not involved in, where it could turn hands, change, and it could be soon because the market's been really hot, or it could take some time. But just,
I think that's a great point on the public.
but being very clear about it, that the interest has gained momentum, and it could be quick, it could be long-term.
And I think, there was a $500 million project that floated around out there about 2 years ago, but it didn't go anywhere. And so, but I think that what doesn't get talked about is that these projects kind of come and go. Desoto may get talked about it, and it ends up in Edgerton was one of them. There really is nothing to talk about other than that there is activity there, and Sarah is doing her job pursuing those. I can't say there's X million square feet of projects that are in the hopper and what the likelihood of those are. I can say that, we've heard of thousands of jobs, but I think it's really her place to come in and give some specifics as to that. And I completely agree that it, outside of the chamber and the economic development group, that there really hadn't been a lot of talk, in part because nothing's real and nothing becomes real. And in part, some of those transactions are ones that she doesn't know about. I think we all found out probably here, or at least I think that's where I found out about it, that Merck bought the property on the north side of K10 between 91st and K10. That was a substantial transaction that changed what we thought might have occurred in that area. So I think there's some of that private stuff that occurs out there. So yeah, I could, but I could screw up the message and make it even worse. I would rather have Sarah come in and address it where she's got the data, the stats, and can give a little bit of history. I get, bits and pieces of it, but I think what we can say very clearly is DeSoto has had a lot of economic development interest for years. It just hasn't had anything hit.
Let me ask this to see if this would be a fair statement. The representation we have on the city, as represented by you and the EDC and others, would be to, as far as the purpose, would be to potentially help guide some of that in the direction of where the council has been looking and what we've agreed the future plans would be. Would that be a fair statement?
Totally fair. And I would say what we've driven is that we need an infrastructure plan. We need an infrastructure plan because we need to know what would need to get built to support the kind of opportunities that we've seen in the past, and what would that cost. And kind of like the economic incentive plan that really came out of our council retreat from a couple of years ago, we knew that somebody's going to come in and ask for these kinds of things. Well, let's have a plan in place. And what we know from seeing
To try and guide that development
to guide it,
in
absolutely.
the direction that we don't get Tyson or something like that.
Absolutely. So as we see these things come and go, well, what if one of these big things land? How much is it going to cost the city to build the infrastructure, and where would we build it? So that's been the big push, is to get this infrastructure plan out there so that we're doing good planning and so that we won't be totally reactive when something happens. So yes, in terms of that role is bringing the things up that we need to act on as a governing body. But we don't have visibility into these private transactions. Even Sarah's under, non-disclosure agreement. Hence the code names that you'll see, Project Flavor, or some of those that have ran around in the past. They don't necessarily always know who's behind these projects. So, I think the big thing that's come out of it here lately is we need an infrastructure plan. We need an infrastructure plan that's consistent with our comprehensive plan and builds on it. Now, I do think it would be really good for all of us to hear some of the stats about a couple of years worth of history of pursuits. And that would give public visibility of the interest level that's occurring.
But the interest level's there to where, I mean, to be honest, something's gonna happen. It's just a matter of when, not if.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be hard to speculate on that by reading Kinsey Business Journal if you've paid attention at all as to what is happening at Edgerton. And what's happening at Edgerton is they're running out of land, they're running out of sewers, they're getting boxed into smaller parcels, and everybody is searching for available land throughout the Kansas City metropolitan area. So it's not hard to speculate that the interest level for land acquisition has gone up considerably.
If I
Now,
can comment. I don't know if it helps, maybe too much detail, but I think it's important to remember, you guys have heard about the golden criteria, that was a Kansas Supreme Court case from, eons ago, but, and just kind of addressing a little bit of the person in the call to the public, that is the golden, that court case indicated that when a city is rezoning property, obviously when you're doing that, the property's in the city, but when a city's doing that, one of the criteria is the city, the planning commission and the governing body, one of the factors you have to consider is what is your future land use map say? And that's, in a way, kind of in some ways, protection to, like the lady that addressed the council, that what the court's saying is that we want you to consider, like, what has that future land use map been for years and years, and because that's sort of the notice, in a way, that the future land use map obviously addresses land outside the city, so one would, presumably if someone was buying property and wondering, what probably will crop up around me, the future land use map would be the source that you would go to. So, for example, if this, let's say this person put together money and bought that property and decided to zone it to residential, we would have a real problem if the city wanted to support that, because it would be directly against the future land use, and that rezoning would, it's not ironclad, but if a developer that didn't want that zoning sued the city, that would be one issue that we would have to explain that, well, yeah, it doesn't match our future land use map, but we went ahead and rezoned it anyway. So I think that's part of one, and I know it's essentially that's been said, but I do think that's important to, and they may not want to hear it, but that's, something that should have been looked at, was that future land use map, to know that this property, would be light industrial or not residential. So.
That's what I was trying to explain to her, not too eloquently, but that's.
Yeah, no, I think it's been said. I just think it kind of, in a way, does kind of reach to a legal issue in a way that, that's something that we have to prepare and has to be, in the public record so that people can look at it. It doesn't sound like that's something that they researched, but that's the whole purpose of it.
and in the preparation of that, we do have extraterritorial planning. And so,
Right.
and that's why we're able to show future land uses out into the county and not just into the city. And that helps give protection to those people that are in the perimeter, or
Right.
protection or an understanding to those people who are in the perimeter of how that would evolve in the city's view if something were to occur.
I just want to remind everybody, be sure and talk right into your mic. It looks like Danny's having trouble hearing, so I just want to make sure to
But
remind
this type of
everybody.
discussion and clarity is what I think I'm saying I'd like to see just consistent when it comes up. And not as, I mean, we don't have to be project specific unnamed, but just that level of messaging and clarity that
Yeah.
of what we're talking about
I
now.
think, yeah, getting back to that, that's a great point, that there hasn't really been clarity and messaging and getting that public message, walking this line between what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, what we can say, what we can't say. It is important that people don't feel like there's secrets being held and that the stuff is happening that nobody knows about. So toward that end, Whitney and I and Sarah are going to meet next week to kind of kick off, some, ideas about helping the chamber, the EDC, sort of get some messaging out. Not about anything specific, but about, what does an EDC do and why is it important and why is development important? And some of these questions that, as a layperson, I would have, if
And I challenge the city, I mean, our incentive policy is ours, it's not theirs. They need to
Yeah.
educate businesses on it, but we need to educate our
Yeah.
citizens on it.
Yeah, the
So
interplay
we-
between the
So
EDC
we have a role
chamber
to
and us.
educate our citizens while they have the responsibility to educate the businesses.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a good point. So, we're not ahead of it right now. We'll try to get out there ahead of it.
Okay,
That's all I got.
thank you, Rob. Mr. Ritter?
Yeah, I don't want to drag a dead horse around, but for the committee, I guess I have a question. Has there been any interest in any development that has come to the committee that you could share with that maybe wasn't brought to anybody else's attention, at the council level or discussed with anybody else that maybe a developer wanted to do or had brought to Sarah or you in the committee but it didn't make it to anybody else to get discussed, I guess, is what I'm asking. Or do they all?
Yeah, Kevin,
do you bring the ones that?
I can tell you, lately, it's almost on a weekly basis. Probably not quite that, but some big project will come down looking for something. You know how that works. KCADC or the Chamber of Commerce or some national firm will come and say, hey, we're looking for this many acres.
Real quick, for those that aren't watching, KCADC has been mentioned multiple times. Acronym is?
Kansas City Area Economic Development Council.
Okay.
Is that right?
Kansas City Area Development Council,
Area Development
KCADC. And KCADC is sort of the mothership of economic development councils for the Kansas City planning area, the metropolitan planning area, which actually extends all the way to Topeka.
So they work with the state pretty good.
Yeah.
They work with the State Department of Commerce, Governor's Office.
So
yes.
Sarah's constantly
You guys work together a lot, don't you?
Yeah, Sarah's constantly responding to that. She has infrastructure and policy questions that I help her with. Usually it's an Excel spreadsheet on a form, and you give them the basic information, and that's pretty easy. And if you make the cut, yeah, that kind of stuff happens a lot. There have been, I'd venture to guess dozens over the past couple of years, and then they date back to, decades, really. Both on Sunflower and the Gabriel property and everything in between. Decades of those sorts of things go on that never get, that don't reach this level.
So I guess the short answer to your question is yes, there are multiple projects that Sarah's working on. And obviously you guys don't talk and you do keep the wall up, and I meant that facetiously, but there are dozens of projects that are active.
But I was just wondering if there was interest in a certain area of the city that maybe somebody brought and it got cut off at that level and maybe wasn't discussed any further with the rest of the council, but it sounds like there wasn't. So my next one is Arcadian Estates. I thought the agreement that you had asked them for 3 ducts, is that correct? So will that be what they'll put in that?
Yeah, I was
area
just
is
looking
3
at the
ducts?
plans yesterday. I don't know whether it's 2 or 3.
I remember
I think
you
it
asking,
ended
but
up. I think it ended up being 2.
2.
I don't recall, but
I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that we get the right number that we.
Okay,
we-
yeah, it's on the plan. I don't remember.
If they just contracted and had Zoom fiber or somebody put in the broadband infrastructure, wouldn't that, is there a point in putting in a duct if you don't have, more capacity than you need, I guess.
I didn't know, but I know you wanted to amend them to.
The reason we wanted it in was so that it could happen in the future, to facilitate it from happening, or, you know, if they weren't in, then it's a lot less likely to ever happen, but if they already have somebody, and I don't know whether they do or they don't, but if they are, say Zoom or RG's already going in, then we need to put them to the expense of putting in another duct?
Would the
for-
conduit enable better competition in the future, or is it going to be exclusive to?
Or should a future guy get a benefit if somebody's already putting it in? I mean, on our, you know, or the developers.
Or is it more for a failure of?
A lot of questions there. Yes, Rob, it's to facilitate competition. And that was kind of where I was going when I wanted to push to have another duct in there. Is it for failure? No, because if you've got a competitive carrier in there, you actually need a third duct for a restoration duct. So the idea is, you know, pull a cable in, pull a cable out, you still end up with a restoration duct.
I just remember that now that
But-
we were talking
and-
about it, I just wanted
Yeah,
to see
do they still need to be there if somebody builds their plant? Probably not.
if anybody had asked.
Right. I mean, I don't know if they, so I guess my position would be, I would hate to make somebody put something in, put two ducts in, and then have Zoom go in too, and then you've got, you know, then you've got all this expense that somebody's gone to for no purpose.
So you're thinking Zoom puts theirs in, but then there's an empty conduit that's never used?
Yeah, or you're right. I mean, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
I mean, it was mentioned, that's why it just coming back to my memory
Yeah,
a
there's
little bit.
two.
But isn't the idea that the developer of a property is putting it in so it's there for whoever comes to, you're thinking Zoom or somebody would go do it totally again?
Well, the way it should work is if there is a carrier in the area, the developer would contract with them to put that in with the development. You wouldn't put this in for some future development, just, you know.
They're both in that area at the same.
Okay.
So, but, and I don't know who the developer's using, I just wanted to ask, I just couldn't remember how many ducks you asked for, so. And, because the reason I asked that was, I noticed RG Fiber was working out there last week or two, and they had placed their, first duct that we paid them for, which was the 7, in the mound that was not deep enough, so then they came back and replaced it on the west side, where Zoom had originally done it underneath the power lines. My question is did they replace it with one duct, or did they replace it with the 7 that we paid them for? Or do we do any construction management
Okay,
to make
so-
sure that was correct?
Okay, not sure I can answer that question because I don't recall if we paid for the 7-way microduct along Waverly.
Okay.
We
No, we did along
It would have been the
95th.
backbone down
But
95th Street.
I don't
That
think
is
it
correct.
extended
Okay,
down
I
Waverly.
didn't know, I just wanted to make sure that they replaced it.
No,
with
I believe that is
Or is
correct,
it
that each carrier, Zoom and RG both built down Waverly independently.
Yeah, and we suspected RG wasn't in the right place. Turned out that was correct. They weren't, so they moved it.
like I said, I just want to make
Yeah.
sure we got what we paid for. And then, Mike, the northwest culvert still doesn't have enough soil protection. No, northeast
Okay,
culvert. It's
the
northeast
northeast,
culvert.
the existing one along.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll show
Okay.
you some pictures after the meeting.
Okay.
They do have 2 bundles of hay there, but you can see where the water has eroded behind them, and
Okay.
it's probably filling that tube up. So.
Yeah, the sooner they can get that detention pond in, the better. That'll solve a lot of that.
I hate to quit bringing that up, but I just don't want to replace that.
Well, no,
Or
if it, yeah,
have
it's still
an
an
issue there.
Yep.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. So Patrick, have you had enough time?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Danny. Yeah, Danny.
Yeah.
Are you there, Danny? Thank you, Kevin, for reminding me.
Danny, you've been in and out on us. Can you hear us? Are you there? No.
You're still muted. You're muted, Danny.
He's on mute.
Can't unmute him?
Still muted, Danny. You're not able to unmute. Let me give him a call.
You're muted.
Go and do the motion.
15 minutes.
I got a problem.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Am I on?
You're on
Yeah,
now.
you're on now. We can hear you.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I'm having troubles for some reason.
Yeah, sorry about that. So you're loud and clear now. As long as you stay unmuted, I think we can hear you.
Okay.
Did you have any council comments then?
No, Mayor, no, Mike, thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble.
It's all right. Thanks, Danny.
If you're ready.
All right.
All right, I'll make a motion that the council go into, recess into executive session at 8:25. See a clock.
8:22 by my watch.
8:22, that works for me. For the purpose of discussing an employee annual job performance. The justification for the executive session is for the primary of the employee and no authorized, or is authorized by KSA 75-4319, Section B1. The open meeting is to resume at 8:37.
In this room, and I'll give this to Brandon to.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? All right.